All right, what up, what up, what up, what up? Cam Williams, what's going on? Fanon, I rewatched the live yesterday. It was a very good topic and a great discussion. Oh, dope.
Opportunity about.
We're going to have some fun today. I'm waiting for people to come on, though. We're going to do some study session today, man. I got a study session. Man, this dude, you got one dude right here. And this other dude right here. Let me tell you for sure. What up, Richard Paris? Glenn Lowry and Charles Murray. What's going on, Terrell Davis, Richard Paris? Yeah. We're gonna do some studying today, man. I'm studying. I realize I gotta get. So I'm gonna take you a little bit behind the scenes as I try to catch up on my politics, man. This dude right here. The dark complected dude. He is a professor of economics, and I would consider him a very much a conservative. This guy over here, the light complected guy with the bald head, stone cold funny business when it comes to minorities and black people, man. So we're gonna go through it today, man. But we're gonna listen to it. I'm not gonna try to really get into who these guys are, but I want your thoughts as we go through it. Because I've been hearing this term identity politics. And, as I get back into the political world, I wanted to understand what this term was. What is identity politics? Why do people keep saying it? And, it's going to relate to something that you know from a few years ago. But identity politics means focusing on your own individual unique characteristics and focusing on that when you consider what the political positions of other people are. Identity politics. Defined as identity politics is politics based on a particular identity, such as ethnicity, race, nationality, religion, denomination, gender, sexual orientation, social background, caste, and social class. So I see myself as a black person. So I look at my politics based off what's best for black people. If I'm like King and, or that dude who sent me a note because he was flashing me, now he's begging me not to call his office. Yeah, I'm sure you are. Sean Curley, what up, brother? Said, let's go Trump. Come on, man. We ain't Joe Trump over here, but we waiting for some people to come on, bro. Everything. Oh, exactly. Well, look, we'll analyze what they want to say, what they say, but I think we're pretty confident we can get 50 people on here. So after we're here for about 10 minutes, then, I'll get into it and we'll go through it slowly, get your thoughts on what the person says, rewind it, trying this format, moving things around, trying to experiment on some stuff. That's not what she said, Ali Talik. She did not say she's not going to do anything for black people. She did not say that, Ali Talik. Damn well she wouldn't say that. Her ass is fried. She said that. When she said something like what this guy is about to say. Anyway, so once we get to 50 people, I'll start going, but here's a little bit. Let's start going. Let's start off at the beginning.
American obligation to one another. If you don't think the schools are working, let's fix the schools for everybody. If you think the cops are too violent, I'm fine with that. We can investigate that for everybody. Don't make it into a racial thing because you cannot contain that. Once the white identity politics thing gets real, you say game over, and I find it hard to argue with you about it.
There's a book by a woman named Helen Pluckrose and a man named James.
Let's listen to that again.
I want to say to the advocates of racial equity, can we talk about human opportunity? So
when I talk about the proponents of racial equity. Can we talk about human?
I want to say to the advocates of racial equity.
Advocates of racial equity.
Can we talk about human opportunity?
Can we talk about human opportunity? Can we get off the focus off of race, which is identity politics, and get on to the idea of human beings having opportunity?
About American obligation to one another. If you don't
Americans' obligation to one another.
don't think the schools are working, let's fix the schools for everybody. If you think the cops are too
Let's fix everything for everybody, not for one group, but for everybody.
violent, I'm fine with that. We can investigate that for everybody. Don't make it into a racial thing, because you cannot contain that. Once the white identity politics thing gets real, you say game over, and I find it hard to argue with you about it.
There's a book by a woman named Helen Pluckrose and a man named James Lindsay called Cynical Theories. And they do a really good job of explaining why this is not a woke ideology that came about in 2014 or 2015. They trace the roots of this back to the beginnings of postmodernism in the 1960s.
Postmodernism in the 1960s. Postmodernism. 1960s. Postmodernism is a term used to refer to a variety of artistic, cultural, and philosophical movements that claim to mark a break with modernism. What is postmodernism in the 1960s? The term began to acquire its current range of meanings in literary criticism and architectural theory during the 1950s and 60s. In opposition to modernism's alleged self-seriousness, postmodernism is characterized by playful use of irony, pastiche, I don't know what that is, and other features. Okay, well, we'll learn that a little bit later. But go ahead.
Show how it developed in a variety of ways. And so when you say it used to be different about running regression equations, you were still, and I was still functioning in a world in which the postmodernists were kind of a weird group of deconstructionists in literature and so forth. And then it started to move into the social sciences more slowly. And what's happened in the last 25, 30 years is that's taken over to a very large degree in a way that it had not taken over when you were doing your analyses in the 1980s. And unless you understand the breadth of this spread of this movement, I don't think you understand the danger we are in, because here's what's scary to me, is that I thought that it was academics that were mostly the people engaged in this kind of thinking. And last summer said to me, nope, you're talking about the mainstream ideology at the New York Times and the Washington Post and down the list. And that is really, really scary.
Well, what he's describing is, from what I can see, Egomaniac, he said, what movement? If he's talking about postmodernism starting in like literature and it moving from in that being a not a seriousness, right? Like a less laissez-faire, like I'm probably not using that right, but a less serious approach to art. But that and it generally moved in to mainstream America. Basically, what you're saying is you got the movie directors, the artists, the writers that began thinking this way, this new woke thought process, right? And what do you typically hear within when they talk about woke? You talk about the gender issues, racial equity issues, and the things that are generally being bucketed in, I think, into the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's a lot of pushback on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace and in other areas. Just so you know, this particular guy over here the white dude, is was the author of the Bell Curve that got written in the 19. It was written in the 19. I think that was in the 1980s. I think that was the 1980s, man. But let me see. Bell Curve. When was the Bell Curve written? Bell Curve. The Bell Curve book. When was that written? That was out when I was in high school, I think. Yeah, 1994 actually was when I was in law school. The Bell Curve came out in 1994. And it argued, it had a lot of racial undertones and the rejection of race as a consideration for college, and swapping it with something like intelligence and the success. Anyway, yeah, you get the general gist. It feels like he's just pulling out of his ass. Nah, both of these guys are PhD level professors. They're definitely not pulling out their ass. But let's continue.
Because those are the gatekeepers for what's respectable thinking.
Let me see if I'm getting you. So there's a threat from the left and there's a threat from the right. You haven't talked about the threat from the right yet. The threat from the left around a kind of relativism that makes racially equal outcomes the god of their attention, and then looks away from facts and kind of anti-rational. Things like, I can't explain differences amongst individuals and their earnings in the labor market by reference to, amongst other things, differences in their cognitive ability. Give an example of that. But what is the threat from the right?
Yeah, see, now he's pandering. Now I will say he pandered a little bit. Laurie just pandered to him because that was the book, The Bell Curve, that what is this guy's name? Oh, Charles A. Murray. It's Charles A. Murray. That was a nod. What he just said was a nod to the Bell Curve. Hey, Ali Talik, you have to focus on. We're not even talking about that, bro. So I'm putting you on timeout. Dog, if your comments are not really related to the subject matter we're talking about, bro, stop that shit, okay? Okay? Yeah, I think that's what they're talking about, Sean Curley.
This is where disaster is looming the closest. And I'm going to give a somewhat different take on it than probably other people have, but I'm not really worried about the white supremacists and the white nationalists. I think they're a very small component of the right. I'll tell you who I'm worried about. I'm worried about all of the working class and middle class whites who have had it beaten into their, they can't turn on the TV without yet another reference to the fact that they are bad people, that they have white privilege, that they have been the cause of blacks' problems and the problems of people of color in general, and that they had better pick their ways or else. And an awful lot of these people are angered by this in a very visceral way. They're saying to themselves, hey, I have black colleagues at work, Latino coworkers, and people in my neighborhood, and I treat them with respect, and I treat them.
Bro, I don't care. See, this is good. See, this is telling you how cats really, really, really think. That's why I tell you guys all the time, like I always say, you have to be very, very careful with who you call a racist. You absolutely have to be positively be careful when you accuse people of that, because they themselves don't feel like they are. They feel like there's a rational basis for what they think. But if they constantly get called that, but they don't themselves recognize it, dude, like that really, really does cause problems with them. If you look at from the perspective of the European American, you'll see like what I think he's honestly describing is the sensation that they get. And when he says, look, I'm worried about if there's anything going to go down, I'm not really worried about the skinheads. I'm not really worried about what he considered to be like white supremacist group. He says that what he's actually most worried about is that of just middle class America, just working class America, who who come to a point where there's like a breaking point for them, feeling as if they have been completely surrounded by the identity politics of a lot of different areas. But see, this is also where I'm telling you, black conservatism, well, I'm not going to say black conservatives, but there's a lot of black people that really do feel, and they recognize the same thing from another area, because like, it's not just an assault on people that are considered racist. It's also the idea of gender. It's the idea of sexual orientation, all the different things that they mentioned in as it relates to identity politics. So as I'm listening to this, the thing that really piques my mind is that this is a very, very, he's basically telling you, I mean, he's giving you an honest opinion about what will make people upset than the majority, the European American, upset. But on the opposite side, because there's so much piling on with other interest group, different identities, even within the black people get mad about the same thing, because it's like, hey, we can't solve the problem if you keep trying to solve all the other problems lined up. You got to get rid of the first problem first, then move to the next. But anyway, it's just really interesting stuff, man. Let me continue. This is how I listen to intellectuals speak. And I do think you need to listen to the PhDs. You need to listen to what they have to say, and, get your, and especially two older gentlemen like this. This man, I do believe Lowry's like 75. I think he's been a professor. He got his PhD, I think, from Harvard or MIT back in the 1970s. Murray is also, a Harvard educated, MIT educated dude. I think they both went to MIT and they both went to Harvard. So I do think that they do have that intellectual superiority, sense of intellectual superiority, where they may value what they call intelligence quotient, when reality is, bro, yeah, some people that are really exceptional separate themselves by certain talent. Yeah, those guys can shine, but that's almost a given. So the question is, what about the people that do not have that? How do they get the things that they need? You know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, this guy right here, Lowry, is close to Thomas Sowell. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with either one of these guys. I'm just listening to their logic, trying to understand from more of an academic point of view what their take is on identity politics and how that relates to the presidential election, because the presidential election is clearly steeped in it. Because, as you see, we argued on this channel about what the identity of Kamala Harris was, right? We're going back and forth. Back and forth. We'll look at Thomas Sowell later and listen to some of the things he has to say, if we're going to do more academic and kind of more deep thought, look at and think about things a little bit more deeply. But let's continue listening to what they have to say.
Friendship. I have not behaved as a racist. I am trying to raise my kids and get them through general, and that they had better pick their ways, looming the close.
Equal outcomes, the God of their attention, and then looks away from facts and kind of anti-rational, and things like, I can't explain differences amongst individuals and their earnings in the labor market by reference to, amongst other things, differences in their cognitive ability. Give an example of that. But what is the threat from the right?
This is where disaster is looming the closest. And I'm going to give a somewhat different take on it than probably other people have, but I'm not really worried about the white supremacists and the white nationalists. I think they're a very small component of the right. I'll tell you who I'm worried about. I'm worried about all of the working class and middle class whites who have had it beaten into their, they can't turn on the TV without yet another reference to the fact that they are bad people, that they have white privilege, that they have been the cause of blacks' problems and the problems of people of color in general, and that they had better pick their ways or else. And an awful lot of these people are angered by this in a very visceral way. They're saying to themselves, hey, I have Black colleagues at work, Latino work coworkers, and people in my neighborhood, and I treat them with respect and I treat them with friendship. I have not behaved as a racist. I am trying to raise my kids and get them through college and make ends meet, and I'm working my ass off. And I sure don't see that I have any white privilege.
Now, see, again, I got to put, I'm having fun. This is me having fun. Hell yeah, I got a black friend. T. Orlando says, I got a black friend. Yeah, I'm a good guy. I'm telling you, though, you don't see it. They don't see it that way, man. And you got to react to them people like they don't see it. Yeah, that was a big I have a black friend moment there.
And so you will not see an in-depth reporting on this kind of white person by the mainstream media. At least I haven't seen it. That's got to be a big number of people. And now let's get to the specifics here. Blacks constitute 12.7% of the population as of 2020. All right. Latinos are at about 18% of the population. And let's face it, an awful lot of the energy for the progressive critical race theory is coming from blacks specifically. So now you got 13% of the population there. Non-Latino whites still constitute 60% of the population. That's way down from 30, 40 years ago, but it's still 60%.
He said critical race series. Why you say that's false, T. Orlando? What is critical race theory? Critical race theory is, what is it? How American racism has shaped public policy, a divisive discourse that pits people against. They don't like history. They don't like history. Oh yeah, I know that's not right. I know we make up more than that too. Yeah, I do believe that's correct.
What is the proportion of that 60% who are really, really getting?
Let's see. (2021) they say it's 12.1% of the 331 million. So you're saying there's still only 30. They never let the black population go up, bro. They never let the black population go up. Like we have babies all day, but you know, the population has to gone up, but over the last, over the last, well, I wonder what percentage is immigrants. What percentage of Americans are immigrants? Oh, 13.8%. 13.8%. So as their numbers go up, it deletes the numbers. So there's obviously a lot of black people here. LR, what up, man? Thank you. Said another super chat Thursday. Thanks, man. What impact has abortion had on the black population? Abortion ends about 999,000. It's about 100,000 abortions a month in the United States. Black women have been experiencing induced abortions at the rate of nearly 4 times white women for the last 3 decades. About 40% of women who get abortions in the U.S. are black. About 40% of the abortions in the United States are black. That's 400,000. Black women get 400,000 abortions a year. 400,000. 400,000. But let's continue.
Being pissed.
Oh, if you guys have a question, jump up and I'll stop. There's a link. Let me put a link because I will take callers, but you know, this is what I wanted to do today. This is fun for me. Black women make up 6% of the American population, and they make up 40% of the abortions. 40% of the abortions. 6% of the population and 40% of the abortions. Yeah, there are more immigrants and Americans than black. That's why our population keeps staying. That's why the percentage stays. We grow, but they let so many other people in. But thank you, man, for y'all hanging out with me while I get together with my, this is, anyway, go ahead, man.
Of them who are, and here's where the danger is, Glenn, are starting to say to themselves, well, guess what? I'm an identity too. And you want to play identity politics? Okay, we can go with that playbook. And if you get a substantial proportion of whites who not just voted for Donald Trump, you can have voted for Donald Trump for all sorts of reasons that doesn't make you far right. But no, it's no longer that. It's no longer political in the sense it was before. It's a much more racially grounded fight than it was before. Now, do I know for a fact that you have this phenomenon going on? I can point to indicators. But how much of that is the result of the last couple of years, and how much of that has been growing because of white middle class and working class anger at the elites that goes back to the 1990s? I don't know about that. I'm saying that if whites start to play identity politics, then basically we're facing some kind of disaster. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Why do Democrats push abortion so hard to eliminate black babies? I mean, look, man, that's more, I think, a women's rights issue. That's a women's reproductive health issues, I think. That's what I would say that issue. That issue is more about women's reproductive rights and the right for a woman to determine whether or not what she's going to do with her body. So Democrats have also been a little bit more pro-feminist, like, you know, that's left-leaning as well, or quote-unquote progressive. That's my best understanding of it. They've been playing, what you talking about? I mean, look, yeah, I think that there's more than one reason to do the same thing. You know what I mean? But look, man, the intention is one thing. The result is something. The result is the result. What you see is that abortion is legal, and abortion, if what this stat that I just read is correct, black women will largely bear the brunt of abortion limits. This is the Texas. Let me say, maybe it's, but anyways, 4 times as many, 4 times the rate. All these factors contribute to black women being the largest demographic of abortion seekers in the U.S. Black women account for 38.4% of abortion patients. The largest share among other racial and ethnic groups, according to the 2019 data. According to 2019 data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, that year white women had the lowest abortion rate, 6.6 out of 1,000 women. Black women had the highest at 23.8 abortions per 1,000 women. In Texas, 18 out of every 1,000 black women of childbearing age received abortions in 2019. Black Texans have consistently had higher rates of abortion in the last decade compared to other groups, with rates 5 to 6 times those of white Texans and double those of Hispanic Texans. Black Texans make up about 12% of the population. It's amazing how we are like 12% of every dang population. But yeah, that's yeah, well, we're just going the facts, man. That's the facts. So that's the answer to the question. I mean, look, I mean, it's a cheaper option. Yeah, so obviously it's a cheaper option. But if you're getting 28%, 38%, there is, I'll do the math on how many black children that is. I can do the math real quick. Is 99,000 a month is what it's been since the ban, since what is it, Dobb? It's been 99,000 a month, right? Times 12. You're looking at 1,188,000 abortions. And then we time this, multiply that by 0.38. You have 451,440 abortions a year from black women. Klan ain't touching that. Klan and the police ain't touching that. Shit, Gaza ain't touching that. Gaza ain't touching that. So, you know, I'm not saying I'm pro. I'm not saying I'm for or against. I'm just saying we just looking at the numbers here, man. We just looking at the numbers. We just gonna go through the numbers and understand the numbers. That's some serious stuff, man. That's serious. That's serious stuff. That's not right, Carl. That's not true. No white women do not abort at a higher rate. Black women abort at a rate 4 times higher than white women. 4 times. 4 times. Per person, black women have more abortions than anybody. Twice Hispanic women. And the population is still growing. That just tells you that black women are highly, highly fertile. I mean, dude, you don't believe it? Let's look at the numbers. I'll pause it. We can go through it. You don't believe it? I believe it. Why wouldn't you believe it? But okay, no worries. Here. Let's go to the study. Before we get back and react, let's go to the study. This is from the CDC, the Center of Disease Control's government. Abortion surveillance, United States 2019. Surveillance summary, November 26, 2021. Okay, so it's just a couple years ago. Biden was in office. Let's go down. Age group, race, ethnicity, marital status. Previous live birth. Man, they got a lot of stuff up in here. I'm looking for a table that got something to do with black women. And I'm on a live stream, so I'm not going to spend here reading the whole thing, but I'm going to look to see. Okay. They might actually have this. It's tough to find, man, because I'm gonna have to go through this whole thing. I think it's a little fast, but let me just show you where it said it, and then you can just trust me. It's right here. Access to abortion is limited. Blau said that she anticipates black maternal rates to increase by 30% or more, poverty rates to increase by 20%. Here you go. All these factors contribute to black women being the largest demographic of abortion seekers in the U.S. Blount said, black women account for 38.4% of abortion patients and the largest share among other racial and ethnic groups, according to the 2019 data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. That year, white women had the lowest abortion rate. 6.6 abortions out of 1,000 women. Black women had the highest, 23.8 out of 1,000. What is 6 times 4? It's like 25, so it's a little bit short of 4 times. It's a lot. Abortions by race in Texas and ethnicity. And what is it? Blacks, Asian, black, white, Hispanic. The abortions went down because of the law, but look. There's more Hispanics, and there's more Hispanics in Texas than there is. Anyway, so yeah, man, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
The indicators that.
Hold on. Joey, what up, man?
Yo, what's going on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well, bro. What's up?
Oh, what's up, bro? Good afternoon to you, man. Yeah, man, me and my wife, we were just sitting here talking. The little one just woke up and we entering the second phase of the day with my daughter. But, you know, what you're mentioning there is really interesting because this is like the field that my wife is in. She deals with all of this stuff across Georgia. But basically, like, there's one component that's not being mentioned, I think, which is the economics, the socio-economic environment. And that's the reasons why. I'm not too sure if I heard you wrong. I may have heard you wrong, and I'll be standing correct. But I think you said, that, you know, the women who choose to go and get abortions, right? But a lot of those. You didn't say that?
No, this is just. Okay, cool. I mean, no, it's just actual abortions that took place.
Yeah, got you.
I don't mean choose or not choose. I'm just saying it's the total number of abortions that took place. That's at least that's the statistics that the 2019 Center of Disease Controls put out.
Yeah, you know, and it doesn't surprise me that, and even my wife said it doesn't surprise her that it's 4 times the amount of abortions amongst black women, but also it's 5 times the amount of infant mortality rate through pregnancies. So it's like, you know, it's all connected to the financial and socio-economic component of, you know, those, because, you know, the data can show different things, right? But my question to you is, like, what is the narrative? Because I know I just jumped in, but I wanted to just kind of understand and catch up a little bit.
I'm going through this.
Good point, too.
I'm going through what this guy is talking about. And somebody asked a question about it. So what really this is about identity politics and the backlash in the white community, which would be considered the Trump community, for identity politics, which has been pushed by which has supposedly been pushed by the left. So this particular guy, Murphy, who, you know, has been around at least a political science, been around a long time ago. He pointed out, he pointed something out, and then it kind of led into the conversation about abortion. But the overall conversation really is about the kind of backlash that may come about from the right because of identity politics and what's going on the left. So I hope that answers your question. But
gotcha.
Yeah, we're going through this. I'm going through this a little bit at a time.
Okay, cool. This is real interesting, man. This opens up a whole can of worms in so many different areas, though. But
yeah, well, when we get done, come up. When I get through it, you can come down come back up when I'm done going through what they have to say.
Yeah. All right.
The whole thing really is about identity politics, and he's right now describing the pushback and the fear that could come from this kind of internal thing that goes on. But basically, you know, how the white American takes all of this pressure put on them as being like the historically advantaged group, and people making them feel guilty for like the shortcomings of other groups of people. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think you're going to hear out a lot of people, yeah, tough titties, because that's what the fucking facts are. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
yeah.
we're
Did you ever read White Fragility?
yeah, but hold on, man.
Okay,
But
no, do your thing, do your thing. All right, cool.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. All right, man.
we're here.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
because I'll tell you why I'm doing it. See, yeah, thanks, right. See, what I'm doing is I'm not here to argue with it right now. I'm here to understand it. I'm not here to listen to like a bit and say I don't agree and then have an hour conversation about what I don't agree about. I'll do what I think after I understand like completely like what it is that they're saying. But anyway, let me go back to it.
The mask thing. Why should it be that what ordinarily would be a very simple question of this is what you do when you got a public health problem, and here's the evidence on masks, and should we do it or should we not? There would still be some disagreement. It wouldn't have broken as dramatically as it did red state, blue state. And it really did break dramatically in terms of red state, blue state.
Stupid. I know the world very well. What I'm trying to do is listen to two conservative people, a black conservative professor and another white conservative, look at the world from a different viewpoint than what I usually look at it as. It's impossible to live on this earth, you idiot, for 50 years and not know what the world is. I think maybe you think everybody looks at the world the same way, though, and that's just not a fact. So, two people that I would not necessarily agree with. I'm trying to understand what they're communicating and where they're coming from. The question is not, do I not know this world? It's, do I understand what people who don't think like I think, what they actually think? And is there any validity to what they think and a way that it can, or any commonalities in the way that they think that I think? It's critical thinking. I am criticizing them, but I'm making sure I understand what they say. You, I suppose, child, may not engage in that very often.
The whole anger on the right well, I'm trying to what are the specific indicators? It's so hard to get whites to talk honestly about race, even among themselves.
Yeah.
Even among them.
It's so hard to get whites to talk honestly about race, even amongst themselves. See, buffoon, I may not have known that because I'm not a white person that talks race with white people, but he is. So maybe if you want to actually make an advancement when dealing with people, you might want to take some time out to try to figure out how they think. Is that okay, Jeremiah? I'm not Jeremiah Austin. I'm not talking to you, bro. I'm sorry, man. Thank you for that support. I'm talking about that other dude. What's the other dude? Not you, Jeremiah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This guy, Greg Lucas. I'm talking about Greg Lucas. Try it out sometimes, man. Be a little bit more willing to listen to people. What up, Jeremiah Austin? Thank you, brother, for that support, bro. Thank you. Thank you for supporting this live stream, man, which is, man, I'm having a blast, bro. But let's continue. Hey, what's going on, Starborn? Yeah, I know he's not talking about the morbidity and morality rate, but the general conversation is not about abortion, though. But we can later on have other discussions where we get into a little bit more detail. But again, like I said, I'm trying to get myself around for these particular trying to get our system together for the live streams that we do, and in a way where we can walk out a little bit more educated than we came in. And not saying you have to agree with anything these people are saying, but just hear it and understand it.
That I can't prove what I'm about to say. I suspect it's out there. And that is a shift away from racism as a moral issue to racism as a kind of, or the accusations of racism as a kind of attack on them as people.
I told y'all.
I'm struggling with this because I'm thinking of,
bro. That's why I tell you. That's why I say that. Listen to this
kind of attack on them as people.
Yeah,
I'm struggling with this because I'm thinking of, because I'm old enough to remember the 1950s and the early 1960s, and if you aren't that old, I was growing up in Midwest, and I went to Harvard, and so I was not in a Southern environment at all. But it's also true that whites were genuinely had their view of the problem fundamentally changed in the 1950s and early 1960s. Whites really did, in an uncomplicated way, say we have really oppressed Blacks in the past. What we have done is unconscionable, and we have to fix it. And it was not something that was coerced out of them as something they ought to feel. It was a deeply felt thing.
What? Now that dude is out there smoking that smoke. It wasn't coerced.
And the triumph of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, I think, is a reflection of that. And it wasn't very long after that, within the next 3 or 4 years, that in a way, the whole civil rights thing was handed over to the lawyers. So it was no longer, if you're an employer, it was no longer, we never even bothered to interview Blacks before. Come on, we've got to reach out and find Blacks who want these jobs and interview them and hire them if we can. It changed from that to, if we don't have enough Blacks, the EEOC is going to be coming down on us. And or do we have enough?
The stats back up what he's saying too. I see you, Terry Schmoot. I think I read something about it was like maybe it was an article by I think it might have been Deloitte and Touche. Deloitte and Touche wrote an article about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and said that their internal polls of companies that the biggest barrier to meeting the targets that people had for like gender, for equity, racial equity, the biggest problem is that the people that had to do it didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. So they just didn't do it. So they say they didn't get it done, and they complained about it the whole time. So trying to put that into major false. That's not what the EEOC does. What are you talking about? What's not? I didn't say anything about the Equal Opportunity Commission. I didn't say anything about the EEOC. But what are you talking about? I didn't say anything about the EEOC. I said the diversity. There's in corporations, there's corporate initiatives called DEI, diversity, inclusion. What is it? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those are things that may be pushed by Coca-Cola, maybe pushed by State Farm, could be pushed by major corporations. And major corporations that want to have certain goals that they reach, their biggest hurdle to having those programs work is that the people that they task to do it, their underlying managers, don't want to participate in that. Terry Schmoot, how can I help you, brother?
My apologies for not. I was going to say, can I just get 1 minute to walk out the office real quick? You can hear them in the background.
Brother, I can't hear a word you're saying.
You can't hear me right now? Can you hear me?
Now I can. You spoke up louder. I can't hear you. You're speaking too soft.
Let me walk out. I'm in the office building. Just let me walk
Okay,
out
hit me
right
back
now.
when you come back out. Okay.
No, give me 10 seconds. Go ahead. I'm gonna go.
Okay, go ahead, man. As soon as you wave, I'm good. What's up, Carl? Tierland. Oh, you talking about the other speaker? Oh, I didn't hear what he said.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies for not.
No,
I've
that's
been
good.
dealing
What's
with
up?
this. No, you know me with me. And salute to you yesterday. I know you had a very good topic yesterday with that one that you did. That was a good one. You got some good views. But no, for this one, I mean, it's a good topic that you also brought up for this one, Fanon. I mean, it's gonna be situational. You know what I mean? This is a very great topic as well. Um, I just don't know how do we do with this, like, because with me personally, like, I feel like what are we doing? Like, what are we doing as a people? And as well, like, what are we? What is our end goal at the end of the day? What is our end goal? Like, what is our projective? What are we trying to do? Because we do have to establish things within this nation, within this country. What is our end goal? Because we're not going to get all of our pieces that we
I got you,
want.
Tier Lando, but you're a little bit off the subject, bro. Let me wait. Let me get through the rest of this before I have people come on, because that's a little bit off topic. I can't even hear you no more. Okay, thank you, Tier Lando. Let me finish this.
To be safe, you know, and that diffused a lot of the moral thing. But then there was another transition that I'm worried about now. Because even then, people who started to think about dealing with the effects of racism legalistically, they still thought it was a good idea, by and large. You know, they didn't like some of the aspects of it, but it's still the thing you needed to do. The transition I'm talking about now is from, gee, I wish, you know, I didn't have to worry about all these rules and regulations regarding hiring, regarding if I'm a policeman, the way I behave and so forth. It's transferring from that to a more fundamental and more emotional, I've had it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of blacks complaining about this and that and the other thing. It's time to suck it up. Nobody knows what the size of that reaction is, but it's got to be out there.
I'm thinking about a book I read a long time ago by a German political scientist named Elisabeth Neumann.
And see, and what he's talking about there is he's talking about the backlash from people trying to solve the problem of racism that they don't really have a sense of, but other people still do. And they see that as an identity, but the identity was actually created by the United States. It's an identity that is given to people. I find it just so funny that you talk about identity focusing on identity that you gave to somebody else. But we continue, man. But that's like the part of it where it's like, yeah, that's their problem. But the backlash that he's talking about could be. Yeah, Joe, the chauvinist. That's why I say you can't ever make that accusation. That's something that Neely Fuller Jr. talks about. It's like, man, when you talk to somebody and you talk about racism, you should be very careful before you accuse it, because there's no way to prove it. The only way that you can really prove it, and it's not the accusation, is if they say it themselves. And I find that interesting that Murphy said that. Made that observation when he started talking. He was like, it's the accusation of racism that is so disturbing. And if we're going to solve the problem, let's just solve the problem, but let's not talk about the reason that we're solving the problem or your perceived reason for solving the problem. That harkens back to what he originally said before. But okay, let's keep it going.
Called The Spiral of Silence. And her argument was it was in the early decades after Nazism.
Spiral of,
and she was talking. I'm thinking about a book I read a long time ago by a German political scientist named Elisabeth Neumann called The Spiral of Silence. And her argument was it was in the early decades after Nazism. And she was talking about German political opinion. And there was a line, there was a script that you were supposed to say as a decent German about Hitler and all of that. And of course, Hitler was Hitler. But the rise of Hitler was a complicated and profound development in German political culture. And it had many aspects to it, that were nuanced and
T. Orlando said, under that logic, if a person says they aren't racist, that means they aren't. No, that's not my logic. My logic is that to accuse them, you have to have proof. If you don't know what they're thinking, it's very difficult for you to assign that reason that they don't like you because you're black to their action when they can put up other ones. However, that doesn't mean that doesn't affect your behavior. That just affects how you say what you say. You can say, hey, man, I suspect that you are. That's it. I just suspect that that's what the cause is. I can't prove what I said. That's what this particular guy said before. Murphy said, I can't, when he started pontificating, he said, I can't prove what I'm saying, but I believe this to be true. There's nothing wrong with that when you're looking at somebody else and the way that they behave is saying, hey, I believe this to be the case, but I can't prove it. So as long as you can't prove it, don't make the accusation, but raise the suspicion. That's what Neely Fuller Jr. talks about. And I think that's a very solid approach to the world, T. Orlando, but let's continue.
Complex, but the line that you're supposed to say in public was a very narrow line. She speculated that a lot of people had problems with that line, thought outside the boundaries of what was acceptable opinion, but, you just didn't say it. And because you didn't say it, no one else knew how many of you like-minded people might have said it. And her point was, this is unstable. This thing can unravel. And when it begins to unravel, it could be overnight. And you look up and you've got a completely different world. It's a very dangerous situation. And I feel that way. I don't know what you'd say to this about our time around the racial questions. I just wonder, so I'm agreeing with you here, how many statues you can take down of founding fathers, how many crowing exhibitions you can give about the demographics making white people into a minority. It's going to be a minority country soon enough. White people are desperate. They're being marginalized. But how many books you can in effect ban because they use a word out of, the lexicon that's supposed to be acceptable. How many accusations of racism that you can throw around and not engender a backlash? I mean, if a white person were to stand up and say, wait a minute, what about my civilization? And then call attention to the Enlightenment or call attention to modern medicine would rest on a foundation of science, almost all of which is a product of European intellectual development and so on. So where's your civilization? If a white person were to say that, I mean, could you really blame them? Well, yeah, you can blame them because it's racist to say that. You can't keep them from thinking it. If the only thing you have to say about crime, policing, and violence in the country is white cops killing black kids, how are you going to stop someone in suburban St. Louis or Baltimore or whatever from looking at the newspaper and coming to the conclusion, well, no, it's black thugs who are killing each other and white.
See, and again, this is harkening back. Now, see, tough stuff to hear, but you know full well that's how people think. Look at Murphy's face when he's looking at this. He's got his hand like this. He's covering his mouth and he's smiling because Lowry, let me make sure I get this. I don't want to say his name wrong. Lowry is saying what people think. Now, is he being an apologist because he makes it the point that that's what people think? You're taught through school that majority of all of science and advancement came from Europe. So if they are going to pay identity politics, can they say that to you? But here's the thing, they're already doing that. At least that's how I see it. That shit is something that people have already said. You learn that in school consistently. Anyway, go ahead. Let me go ahead.
With everybody else besides, and I dare not drive into that city. I certainly wouldn't open a business there. And I moved my family 20 years ago. How are you going to stop them from saying that? Yeah. So I want to say to the advocates of racial equity, can we talk about human opportunity, about American obligation to one another? If you don't think the schools are working, let's fix the schools for everybody. If you think the cops are too violent, I'm fine with that. We can investigate that for everybody. Don't make it into a racial thing because you cannot contain that. Once it, and as you say, once the white identity politics thing gets real, you say game over, and I find it hard to argue with you about it.
Man, okay. Yeah, it was a very. They ain't feeling that. What are you talking about? I mean, that's a position that their academics are looking at identity politics. And you have Kamala Harris, who's running as a black female Indian. She's got all kind of different personalities, and you got Trump that's running against that. So if she wins and it continues to get pushed down the more quote unquote woke, right? Who sounds like Kamal? Yeah. He said the same thing Kamal said. All politicians believe that because the politicians all say that, but yeah, they say, like, can we fix the problem without focusing on that and isolating and making people feel bad because you make them feel bad. I mean, the way that I summarize that whole conversation is some very well-educated, very intelligent men who are raised in the 1950s, 1960s, who are looking at the development of the movement of the kind of the racial overtones or reality that takes place in the United States. And they're saying, look, man, this has been kind of swept over by this group of postmodernist, artsy fartsy ass people that want to play to all these different, separate identities, whether it is, the LGBTQ, BLK, Black Lives Matter, and all of this that are constantly putting upon the quote unquote privileged European American community who doesn't feel all that privileged because they have real lives and real problems, that you put upon them thoughts that they don't have, that they don't really feel like they have themselves. And at a certain point in the time, isn't going to get a point where they say, fuck it. If you keep calling me that, you keep telling me I'm that and I'm not that, I'm going to fucking become that. And man, that's a lot of fucking problems, right? But is that really any different than what started the problem to begin with? The feeling of being put upon and mistreated by other people that push people, you know what I mean? Postmodernists as men being women. Yeah, like you don't have any real gender identity. And I'm telling you, the interesting thing is that you do really cause a lot of problems when you say, like, I'm only going to vote for Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris is black, I'm black. That means I'm going to. Yeah, it is very circular. It is very circular. But I think that is an honest viewpoint in the way that those men see the world. Now, but one of them is an economist. So the economist, I always kind of excuse them because they're trying to, postmodernism seems completely illogical. I don't know. I'm telling you, man, I don't really think that they believe that they're racist. I believe that they think that we know what racism is. They don't. They've never experienced it. White people don't experience racism, so how would they know when they're committing it? You know what I mean? Like, they may just think that's the way the world works. There's a lot of people that are straight up and down misogynists that don't see themselves being that way because that's what they think the world, they just think that's how the world really is. But it's interesting, man. Malik Yachai said, my dissertation is on this subject and I'm from Southeast Texas, so I really understand both sides. Yeah, man, that's dope. Postmodernism is ironic since it's it's illogical. Oh yeah, that is ironic. No, you mean that's a oxymoron. How can you be past modern? Modern is right now. How can you pass that? Godzilla Power said, Fanon, how many white women you done slept with? One. Your mama. And her breast stunk. And I didn't like it. Yeah, so I said, take this $200 and beat it. And she left. Bro, guys, dude, you're out of here, bro. You see you later, dude. That's all you have to offer to this conversation, bro, is that you're terrible. All right, so here's a link. If anybody want to make a couple comments, we got about another half hour. But I thought that was a really, really interesting conversation I want to share with you. I thought that was a very interesting exchange between the two of those. Now, it's a clip. Make sure you go to the channel that is on Glenn Lowry, Glenn Lowry. And again, his beliefs are not the beliefs of the panel. You know what I mean? That's not how he thinks about it, but I respect him. Only one. Damn, you missing out on that Becky Nut Dog trip. Look, bro. Man, I done had more ussy than you can shake a stick at, bro. I ain't had no more time. I was all full. I was all booked up with a variety of black women. I was straight. I didn't need to do it. You know what I mean? My car was full, homie. Anyway, so a couple more chances at this, and then I'm gonna bounce. I hope y'all really enjoyed this because I found it really fun. Where'd you go, T. Orlando? Yeah, one. His mama. I don't know. It depends on how you define black woman. I mean, how define who? And listening to y'all, shit, 20. Shit, if Kamala ain't black, 20. Malik Yacha, what's up, man?
Oh, nothing much, Manon. I actually missed the debate yesterday because I actually could have debated you on that one, but I was too busy.
What you debated me on yesterday?
The black church one, but I didn't hear your position, so
yeah, there you go.
Next time. Next time.
Next time, what's your mind on this? You wrote your dissertation on that. That's dope, man. What are your thoughts, man?
Well, okay. Well, I'm from Southeast Texas, first of all. So, I mean, you know, I'm right up the street from Viola, Jasper, all that stuff, right? So kind of live this life. If you know, you from Texas, I mean, you live in Texas, you're not from Texas, but you live in Texas, right. So you understand you understand what I'm saying when I say that. But my research is actually upon band directors in Texas, particularly ones that graduated from HBCUs, and how they navigate the UIL marching competition. And I'm trying not to be overly technical, right? There's three different types of bands.
Overly technical, bro.
There's three different types of bands in Texas. There's core style bands, which is the majority, right? Predominantly white bands with these big production of shows, right? There's military style bands, which is also predominantly white. And then there's HBCU style bands that model themselves after HBCUs. Now there's a
yeah, I got you.
So, but if you look at history, you know, all these things kind of meld together. So two of those groups feel like they have been adjudicated unfairly, right? One is because of, I guess, style preferences, and one of them maybe because of race and other things. So we're at a crux of the matter where they're starting to look at this diversity, inclusion, and equity thing, and we're trying to fix some stuff. The military bands decided that they wanted to secede from the union, right? Secede from the union, and they just tried to make their own, you know, thing. UIL said, no, we're not going to let you do that because, you know, money, things like that, right? So we're going to make a separate but equal track for you. Now, I don't know if you know history, but separate but equal did not necessarily work that well for black people. So we're kind of in a gray area. But when you're coming to this,
it ain't equal,
right? Usually, but when we come to this, when we're coming to this system that's in place, you have, you know, white people that are very genuinely trying to solve this problem, but they don't know how because they don't understand, right? It's kind of a cop out. I'm with T. Orlando a little bit, but there's some others that's really genuine. So you're in the middle. You have those who are trying to help, and so those who are trying to hold their structure. Now, I don't want to make people think that I'm defending anything. I'm just stating facts, right? So yes, there used to be a PVIL, which was governed by Prairie View for all colored people. That's what it was called back in the day, right? And they had the whites only UTIL. In 1967, all this stuff merged into the UIL. Of course, you know what happened. The white people kind of got the jobs, black people got pushed, and the colored people kind of got pushed to the side when they merged with the universal interscholastic league. So now there was a dominance of that predominantly white style over every other style, right? So now you fast forward to nowadays, and we're trying to kind of fix that dynamic. There's a certain.
How does that relate to what these guys were saying?
Okay, this is how it relates. There's a certain dynamic that you have to understand. As a researcher that's trying to change these things, because I'm a vice president of one of the big Black Music Educators Association in Texas. As you're trying to sit at the table and change these things, it's like coming into somebody's house and saying, "You're doing everything wrong. Do it the way I want you to do it." And there's a certain part of that is a resistance that's automatic. How can you come into my contest that I created and tell me how to run my contest? I never even thought about being racist whenever I was making this contest. I just know this is the type of music that I prefer. This is the sound that I prefer. And this is what this contest has been about since the beginning. Now, because of the structures and how everything was pushed out, there was a place for us before. Now there is no place in that structure. So we're trying to tell them, you have to change everything you're doing right now because I want access and I want equity. They're saying, well, hold on. This was a Western European art competition. And now you're trying to bring all these other things. But we're in a state, as you know, the demographics is changing rapidly, and we're about to be a majority minority state, right? So with that being said, I understand the issues, and I like the way you're approaching this, because in order to solve these issues, I found you have to be able to understand the other person's side. We've made more progress when we are able to translate some stuff, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't understand this or this." So my role is I'm researching the HBCU history, dynamic, and everything else, and kind of paralleling it to that and offering this history to educate and then transform that way. As long as we're fighting, we're adversaries. So as a Black person, you have to kind of navigate all these different things. You got to push the change, right? But you can't push too hard because you don't want to offend. But then the Black people are like, well, what you mean offend? They're offending us, right? So you're caught in the middle when you're trying to navigate and change stuff. But the only way that I found that is effective is, one, being sure about your history. You have to know what you're talking about. There's a thing called a Dunning-Kruger effect. Whenever somebody learns something and they think they're an expert on it, but then they realize the more that they go into it, it's way more complex than you thought it was, right? Yeah. So there's that side. So you got these people that are pushing, systems and racism and we're pushed down, which they may be correct about these things, but the way you go about it is more nuanced. You have to understand the history of what happened. So when I bring out the fact that there were two separate but equal contests, and now there's no place, now we have a conversation to start. But it's not as it came to a head one time. I was one of the superior rating directors in the state, and I decided to do it our way. And the guy that was over the region, he told me, he said, and of course we got low scores. He said, we just have to teach you the Texas sound. And my response was, you mean the sound that I achieved superior ratings on last year? He was so embarrassed and so hurt that he said that because he forgot that I was the golden child. I was the Black guy that was doing it the right way, right? So that opened up the conversation because I was able to achieve. But a lot of times what happens is when somebody of my level and status get to that, we've already changed so much that we forgot where we come. So it's a hard line to roll. You got the role of the Black person that's trying to change things in a way that's both acceptable that's going to be, I don't want to say acceptable because it sounds like I'm trying to legitimize myself, which I'm not. I'm already illegitimate, right? But you have to approach. I can't control how my message is received, but I can control how I send out. And that takes knowledge, that takes understanding, that takes listening to and hearing hard stuff like, we just got to teach you the Texas way, even though you've already proven that you're superior at that way. You just decided to do something different. So my only point is that the same point that you made. you have to listen to understand where someone is so that you can meet them where they are to do that thing. But that's very hard when you're hearing certain stuff. And that backlash, that argument, that rage that comes when you hear these things, we've always had to be, it's the classic W.E. Du Bois versus Du Bois versus Booker T. Booker T said 5 fingers on the hand, strong fist, cash your buckets down, we'll just do this the technical way. W.B. Du Bois says, I'm still black, and it doesn't matter. So you have to navigate these things. And of course, what the choice usually is the one that's more palatable, the one that's less radical. But there's a time for radicalism, and then there's a time for, all right, let's talk. Maybe the difference between Malcolm X in his early life and Malcolm X in his later life, right? And the roles kind of reversing between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. But it gets really complex in navigating these things. The thing I think that everybody needs to realize is that everybody's experience is valid. So when we put these things upon people, like you said, these white people, they have problems too. They are on welfare more than we are a lot of times. And we generalize these things and we come in, but these things are so nuanced. And when we have to explain, when we have to make bridges, sometimes it takes those cooler heads to come together and say, hey, this is how this made me feel. This is how it is. But then there's this dichotomy of the people that's hardliners. We're not going to change. And then you have the overly liberal. Well, we want to change everything. I have to tell them,
I got a roll, bro. I got a roll. It's going a little long. Thanks.
Yeah, I know. It's so complex.
Yeah,
but
it's hard to follow you. It's hard to follow you because you're moving.
Yeah, it's really complex. But the idea is there's this spectrum, right? There's hardline on both sides, right? And you have to be careful on both sides, whether it's the extreme liberal or the extreme right or extreme left. You have to be really, really careful because both things results in marginalization, and marginalization gets rejected, and that's where wars come from.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you, Malik.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. All right, man. I get back, sir. Thank you. Yeah, breakdown. Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's tough. Like you can't make any progress if you don't understand where the other person is. And it's very tough to listen. That's why, when I was playing it, as soon as you play it and he says, will you say one thing that somebody doesn't like to hear? What happens? You're going to talk for about 45 minutes about the one thing that they don't like to hear. And you'll actually never get all the way through to try to understand and give yourself your own synopsis of where they come from. Like having listened to that clip, I had to listen to that. Every time I listen to it, I get a little bit more nuanced understanding of where the people where the people are coming from. But yeah, I mean, communication is very tough. But also, man, there's the downside on it, which they didn't talk about as much from that side, is that, you get the same thing where you're talking to where black people are talking to other black people about what ideas they have, and and you get the same type of, just stop as soon as you start talking about anything, it's not all that complex at all. Not being able to handle emotions makes it complex. Yeah, I mean, not being a good communicator is tough. Yeah, if you can't communicate, how are you going to be able to hear what people have to say? I mean, even on the boxing channel, man, I'll do a boxing video and I'll put the title up there. I'll say what I think. And man, somebody's going to take what they want out of that title. They're going to make it mean what they think it means. And they're going to start talking to me almost immediately as if they listened to a word of what I had to say. It's just this really, really reactionary thing. But I did understand also where Terry Schmoot is coming from, where Terry's like, okay, well, what do you do about it? Again, man, that's why I go back to the teachings of that Neely Fuller Jr. teaching. Just be constructive in everything you do, you say, and you think, and try to be constructive every day and reach your own individual goals and be independent in your goals. Because you're going to have to compensate for what's going on in your own personal life. If you sit around and wait for white people to solve every type of problem they have related to us, that shit ain't never going to happen. And seeing as it ain't happened since at least 1865, and I do believe the drama started off around 1600, seeing as we pushing on 400, well over 400 years, they're not going to solve the problem because it's not a problem for them. First of all, the big struggle is to get them to think it's a problem. If you are really benefiting from something, or at the very least, it's not hurting you, it's not real to you. So that's why they don't believe that it's real. Because number one, they don't experience it. And if they do experience it, it's not a problem for them. And there's plenty other justifications for why they do something that's in their own self-interest, other than they don't like you. Very rarely in life are you going to get somebody to admit that they did something or made a decision because they don't like you. They're going to justify it with other things because there's more than one reasons. There's oftentimes more than one reason to do the same thing. Very, very fun conversation, man. But hey, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation enough to tell people to come on by for the live stream, the non-boxing live stream that takes place at 3:30 p.m. And I'm probably going to do it every damn day. But this was a lot of fun, man. Can you put a 1 in the chat if you like this format? I need to take a poll. Did you like this format? Because I thought that was very educational. There's also some other things that are really interesting in the science area. I need a reaction, man. I got 124 people. Oh, yeah. Indeed. 100, yes. Adrian, 1. Creo to Travel say they've been living high on the hall. Yeah. Chevy, 1. All things G-Man. Creo to Travel. Okay, dope. Phenomenal Show said 1. This was your idea, Phenomenal Show. You asked if I could react. So I did a reaction. Yeah, it's dope. E. Williams, Javon Freeman. Okay, dope. So you guys liked it. I'll do more of them because this kind of fits. We talk our way through it. I like it. And thank you so much to Mr. Lowry, to Dr. Lowry, excuse me, to Dr. Lowry, and to Dr. Murray, Dr. Murray. And I think Murray's a lawyer and a doctor and a PhD, I think. Yes, sir. Big Block liked it. Juan Cardenas likes it. Yvonne Freeman, E. Williams. Okay, great. So we got a good little format, man, and this was fun to do. Thank you. We need E. Williams to know more than, hey, we'll be back tomorrow. E. Williams, I'll be back with it tomorrow. And we're going to take a deeper look at the political issues. I think this is a little bit more tech. Can we suggest videos? So yeah, all the time. People suggest them all the time. Yeah, you can suggest videos for sure. Yeah, but we'll call in. Okay, that's what's up. No, for real, man. Like, hey, man, it's a new channel. It's monetized now. Thank you guys for helping to get monetized. Now we're going to fine tune it, and we're going to get the type of content that's distinct and you like. Joe A in the building. Thank you, brother. And anyway, with that, y'all have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow with the show where we talk boxing over at Phenom International Boxing. Please do me a favor. We got 124 people out here. Can I get 100 shares? Like it a lot? Okay, that's what's up. Don't forget to sub. Hey, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Yeah, all that good old stuff, man. And with that, hey, all right, Adrian, get back, man. Banks the Boxing Fan. Get your Javon Freeman. Peace. I'm out. Deuces.